Hello, my name is Lisa Shea, and this is part of my video series on horror authors, horror stories, horror poetry, horror interviews, and all things horror. So this particular session is about my short story Forgotten, which is 16 pages long and about 3,239 words long. So if you're interested in reading the story before we discuss it, you can go do that now. If you don't care about spoilers, then that's fine, we can move ahead, but I'll be talking about the entire story, so you'll hear the plot from start to finish for this. So, Forgotten. This story has a main heroine named Sarah, and Sarah is an unreliable narrator. Many of my stories tend to feature unreliable narrators, and Sarah is more unreliable than most. She is in a facility. She's not really sure where she is or what's going on, and a nurse comes in who has been caring for her for 10 years, and she doesn't even really recognize the nurse. So Sarah has issues with dementia or Alzheimer's or something similar to that. So the nurse is very gentle. Sarah asks about her husband, Joshua, and the nurse's eyes are a bit sad and says he's not here right now, so we get a sense that something's going on with Joshua, the main character, Sarah's husband. So the nurse tries to put her off and says, we'll talk about this later. And Sarah falls asleep again. So now Sarah wakes up and she's getting a replacement nurse while her main nurse is away on vacation. So this replacement nurse is named Hong and is Vietnamese, but Sarah thinks that it's her dear friend Yen that she spent many, many years with. So she thinks that her friend Yen is coming to visit her, but it's actually a completely different woman named Hong. So Sarah sort of looks at her more closely and she realizes, oh, it actually isn't the same person, and she's embarrassed that she's made this mistake. But the nurses understand, because the nurses know that she's having these kinds of issues. So Sarah asks after her husband again, and she's sort of put off, but she figures that everything will make sense soon. So she wakes up in the middle of the night, and the Vietnamese woman nurse comes running in and is helping the elderly patient, because Sarah isn't in a solo room, she's in a room with a number of other patients. So the nurse is in there taking care of one of these other patients, and it turns out the nurse saved the man's life through her quick action. So everyone is all happy about it. Sarah's still a little confused about who this new nurse is, if it's her friend or not, but she lets it go. So we get another scene where she's worrying if her husband's going to come or not, where the nurse comes in and she's sort of confused about who the nurse is, and Sarah starts asking her about, did you read the story The Maltese Falcon? And the nurse says, yes, I did, it's fine. So we get another scene in the dark, and it looks like the figure in the dark is doing something to one of the other patients, and then suddenly the patient's in distress and the nurse is able to save the patient. So Sarah starts to think that something's not quite right here, that it seems almost like the nurses are causing the problems and then fixing the problems to get praise for fixing them. But she's not really sure. I mean, she doesn't even know where she is or what the year is or anything, so everything's pretty confusing to her. So once again, we had the Vietnamese nurse taking care of Sarah. Sarah is asking her, did you read the book, The Maltese Falcon? And the nurse says, yes, I did. So again, we're getting clear symptoms that Sarah's memory isn't working very well, that her facial recognition isn't working very well, but she still is just a bit confused about what's going on. We get another scene in the dark, and she sees that the Vietnamese nurse, who she's calling Yen, is over doing something to one of the other patients. The other patient starts having an issue. Yen goes in and rescues her. Everyone's all happy. And Sarah's really sure by now that something unhealthy is going on between the nurse and the patients. So now we have another blonde nurse coming by with the Vietnamese nurse, and they're talking back and forth. And Sarah tries to tell them that she saw the Vietnamese nurse by the patient's bedside before the alarm started going off. And the nurses start asking her, well, do you even know what day it is? Do you know who this nurse is? Do you know if Joshua, your husband, is coming to visit you? And it's clear from the patient Sarah's answers that she really doesn't know at all what's going on. So they easily dismiss her concerns about what this nurse could be doing. So Sarah waits until the blonde nurse is there alone with her, so that the Vietnamese nurse is not anywhere at all in sight. And she tries to explain to her, that the Vietnamese nurse is a problem, that she's causing these issues, which then she's able to get credit for saving the people from. And the blonde nurse says, all right, do you know what day it is? And Sarah doesn't have an idea what it is. She doesn't know what people's names are. So again, she gets dismissed because clearly she can't know anything at all if she can't even get a hold of some of these basic facts. So now it's pitch dark in the room again, and she knows that someone's in the room with her, besides the other patients, but she can't do anything about it, and suddenly she's being smothered. So she tries to fight against the smothering, but she is completely helpless, and she ends up passing out. So now, because of the prolonged oxygen deprivation that happened as part of the smothering, her brain damage has gone even further than before. So before, at least, she could talk and express herself and have some sort of sense of what was going on, but now she's completely helpless. She can't talk, and she is, in essence, turned into what they're calling sort of a vegetable, but she does actually still have the ability to process and to see what's going on and to hear things. So she isn't as far gone as they think that she is. And her husband has now come in the room. So this is Joshua, who we had almost got the sense of might have been dead or something from the previous conversation, but he has come in the room, and the Vietnamese nurse comes in the room. And we discover during their conversation that this Vietnamese nurse is the daughter of the friend that Sarah kept thinking it was. So it's not that they were completely two different people in a distant sense. They were related, mother to daughter, so it makes sense that she keeps confusing them for each other because they look very similar to each other. So it turns out that the daughter had been interacting with the husband while the husband was recovering for an infection, so that's why he wasn't over visiting his wife every day, and why the nurses were making comments, or not making comments to disturb Sarah, but having a reaction that something was going on with the husband. So he was away fighting an infection. This Vietnamese nurse was taking care of him, and through that process they fell in love, and the nurse decided that all she had to do to be able to get her hands fully on Joshua was to put the Sarah further out of the way. She was already in a nursing home, but if she was a responsive person in a nursing home, Joshua could feel connections to her. If she became a wholly unresponsive person in a nursing home, she'd be easier to drag him away. So now they're selling the house. They're going to buy a nice lakefront property so that they can have their time together. And as a parting gift for Sarah, the Vietnamese nurse brings a picture of her mother and puts it right alongside the picture of Joshua. So all that Sarah can see now is the picture of Joshua with the Vietnamese woman, who she confuses between the daughter and the mother, and that the two of them are now going to be off together enjoying their future life while she is trapped in the bed, unable to speak, unable to say anything, and with staff who thinks that she is no longer even a responsive person. So when the husband and the Vietnamese nurse leave the room, she's left with the four motionless bodies who are not interacting with her at all, and with the air machines that are just sitting there hissing and recycling the air. So she is now completely alone and abandoned. So that's the gist of the storyline of what's going on. It's an unreliable narrator, and again, this is something that I cover in many of my stories, but it's also important to me to note that even if someone has mental challenges or Alzheimer's or dementia or these other challenges, they're still a person and they still have valid thoughts and feelings, and we shouldn't dismiss everything that they say out of hand because they have issues in one area. I mean, yes, Sarah couldn't necessarily remember what the day is, and she couldn't remember why her husband wasn't coming to visit her, but she still was able to realize things and pick out issues. And the staff were just ignoring her because they said, oh, well, she doesn't know what day it is. Clearly she can't know anything at all. And that sort of response concerns me greatly. And then there's also the element of the nurse taking advantage of the situation and looking for ways to infiltrate herself into the husband's life, and then, of course, to smother the wife so that she is out of the picture without having to actually kill her. So there's a number of different things at play in here. But I think mostly it's, again, the sense of not having a voice, not being able to speak up for yourself. And the main part of the story, when she does try to speak up for herself, she's completely ignored, and then by the end of the story, she can't even speak up for herself anymore. She's completely lost her voice. So, again, if you look back at some of the other videos and the other stories we've talked about, this is something that seems to be something that I bring up over and over again. And it could be because I'm a writer and expressing myself is important to me. But I also, again, work with a lot of people who have mental challenges, and I want them to be able to have a voice, and it concerns me greatly that they might feel like they don't have a voice, or that when they do try to say things that people just sort of dismiss them because, oh, there's someone with challenges, so we shouldn't really pay full attention to the things they're trying to say. So these are the kinds of topics that I'm working through and covering in these stories. So hopefully that makes it more clear about what's going on and my motivations behind writing it. Let me know if you have any other questions that I didn't cover. If you've written similar stories, let me know. I'd love to read them, or post if you've got questions about topics in general, or if you want me to cover any particular stories going forward. I look forward to hearing your questions. Let me know if there's authors that I should interview. And have a great weekend. Take care. Oh, please like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe so that I can get more publicity for the authors that I interview, because these people are really talented and I want to make sure I get the word out about them. So thank you very much.